In today's video, the vigilantes for hire, known as Anger Incorporated, confront the supernatural evil of the Dark Carnival as we play our third on-screen game of Pulp Alley 2nd Edition. Well, hi folks, this is Lee from SkirmishWarGames.com. Welcome to the channel. I'm here with Lynn.
Hello.
And today we're going to play our third on-screen game of Pulp Alley, the pulp genre tabletop skirmish game. Today's mission is a basic smash and grab scenario right out of the core rulebook, with one minor twist. It takes place at a cursed fun fair that only materializes once every 13 years. You'd think a creepy carnival suddenly appearing in the vacant lot next to the village would give the residents pause, but apparently the lure of bright lights, cotton candy, and disturbing attractions is too much to resist. So, if you're not frightened by murderous clowns or demonic sideshow freaks, please join us as the vigilantes for hire, known as Anger Incorporated, face off against the terrors of the Dark Carnival. So if you watched our first Pulp Alley gameplay video, Dead Rise in Christmas Village, that was a two-player cooperative game where each player controlled just a single character. Today's scenario will be player versus player with full leagues, so we'll have two teams duking it out for possession of one major objective and four minor objectives. As I mentioned before, one team is known as Anger Incorporated. They're a group of freelance adjudicators or vigilantes for hire, and their services include investigations, repossessions, and liquidations. So they've been hired to go out to the Dark Carnival before it vanishes back into the mists and recover stolen property. So a lot of people go to the Dark Carnival, they lose their wallets, their electronic devices, their jewelry, their watches. And also, there is an urchin who was last seen going into the funhouse, little Timothy Terwilliger, and he has disappeared. And so Timothy Terwilliger is essentially the major plot point, because if he's not rescued, he'll probably become one of the lost souls who has to work for eternity at the Dark Carnival. Anyway, if you're looking for some hired muscle to go and beat up some demonic clowns, the team at Anger Incorporated is probably a pretty good choice. To begin with, they work on contingency, which means they'll help themselves to 50% of any recovered loot, plus a little bit extra for expenses. But for that modest fee, they promise to deliver a savage beatdown on any perpetrators they find, so it's money well spent. The leader of Anger Incorporated is the enigmatic Mr. Id. He is a lucky devil, he has an iron will, and he also has the commander special ability, which means that Anger Incorporated gets 4 additional roster slots. So while the minor characters of the Dark Carnival tend to be level 1 followers, the minor characters of Anger Incorporated are mostly level 2 allies. Mr. Id's sidekick is the pistol-packing vigilante known as Nightclaw. Nightclaw is a marksman, so he's much better at shooting than he is at brawling, and he also has the sharp special ability, so he can reroll 1 finesse or shoot die per turn. Next, we have Anger Incorporated's 3 level 2 allies, starting with Mac 11, who has the burst special ability. She's standing next to Bunker, a doomsday prepper who is very good in a brawl. And then we have Spike, who is a better shooter than she is a brawler, and she can reroll 1 shoot or finesse roll per turn. And finally, we have Danger Goat, the world's smartest goat. He's an animal, so he can't shoot, but he's halfway decent in a brawl. Anger Incorporated will be confronting the lost souls of the Dark Carnival, led by Lilith, demon queen of the carnies. Now, Lilith can't shoot, but she's an absolute nightmare in a brawl. Her quick strike ability allows her to increase the number of brawl dice she uses once per turn, and because she has muscles of steel, even if she gets injured, her brawl ability doesn't decline. Lilith's trusty sidekick is Magnus, the undead strongman. Now, Magnus is big, so he has as much health as a level 4 character, even though he's only level 3. Like Lilith, he also has muscles of steel, so even if he's injured, his fighting strength doesn't decline. Next, the Dark Carnival crew has 3 expendable level 1 followers, including Candy Cane, the murderous car hop. She's kind of a shooty character. Chuckles the Clown is kind of a fighty character, as is Rhodey the Roadie. He's a fighty character as well. In addition to capturing young Timothy Terwilliger, the Dark Carnival crew will be attempting to protect their strong boxes full of loot. These are the minor objectives, the minor plot points, and of course, the Dark Carnival carnies also get brownie points for neutralizing any member of Anger Incorporated. Okay, Lynn, is your team ready to confront the terrors of the Dark Carnival?
I don't know about that. This looks a little scarier than we were led to believe.
What's your opinion on demonic clowns, for or against?
I don't like them.
Well, hopefully you won't run into any during your quest to find young Timothy Terwilliger and also line your pockets with some recovered loot. Just be careful, because rumor has it that the dark magics of the carnival have started to turn Timmy feral, so he may bite. So Lynn won the initiative roll, so she'll be deploying first, and then also deciding who activates first when we start turn 1. So Anger Incorporated has deployed by the main entrance to the carnival, and looks like they're trying to infiltrate after the carnival has closed down for the night. On the other side of the table, the Dark Carnival crew has just returned from burying some evidence out in the abandoned field, and they're getting ready to collect their loot, to pack up the carnival, and to disappear for another 13 years. And with that, the stage is set for an epic confrontation between supernatural evil and some mercenary vigilantes as we present Anger Incorporated versus the Dark Carnival, Chapter 1. At the start of turn 1, each team draws 3 fortune cards, which may come into play a little later depending on circumstances. Lynn is the director, so she decides which league activates a character first, either her league or my league. Anger Incorporated is currently parked just outside the entrance to the carnival, not too far from a couple of strong boxes, and of course there's also the major objective, young Timothy Terwilliger, in the center of the board, just waiting to be rescued.
Since I'm the director, I'm going to activate one of my second level followers, Bunker, and I'm going to have him run over towards that strong box, which is one of the minor plot points.
Okay, there's one of the loot boxes. It's a minor plot point, and Bunker is going to run toward it. He's going to run a full 12 inches, which means he can't perform an action, though I suppose he could shoot if he had a target. You can't really see it from this angle, but right around the corner there is a strong box full of loot. Okay, Lynn, you're the director, so who's activating next?
With my director powers, I'm going to activate Nightclaw, nimbly climbing on top of this wagon to take aim at Candy Cane on the other side of the carnival.
So Nightclaw climbs to the top of the railway car and shoots all the way across the carnival at Candy Cane, who's standing on top of the ticket box. Candy Cane is going to return fire, but she's only a level 1 shooter, so she's going to shoot with 2d6, and Nightclaw is shooting with 4d8. Nightclaw got 4 successes, Candy Cane got 0, so she has to make 4 health checks. Candy Cane needs to roll a 4 or better to pass each health check, but she only rolls 2 successes, so as a level 1 character, she's out of here.
Nightclaw takes out the dastardly Candy Cane.
Bye, Candy Cane. We barely knew ye. So first blood goes to Anger Incorporated. Lynn is still the director, so she decides which league activates next.
Before I make my next move, I want to see what the Dark Carnival is going to do, so you can activate one of your characters.
So for my first activation, I'm going to have Lilith, Demon Queen of the Carnies, go about 12 inches this way, to say hello to her favorite patron, Timmy Terwilliger. Hi, Timmy. Want to see a magic trick?
Since I'm still the director and I'm not sure I want to tangle with Lilith yet, I'm going to have the Dark Carnival activate again and see if I can get a bead on someone else.
So for my next activation, Magnus, the undead strongman, is going to see if he can get over there to that objective. And he can run up there. So Magnus had to run to reach the lockbox, so he'll have to wait till next turn to perform an action and try to secure it. Lynn directs the Dark Carnival crew to make another activation, so we're going to activate Chuckles the Clown. Chuckles doesn't want to get shot like Candy Cane did, so he's going to run around the back as full movement and try to put some terrain between himself and Nightclaw.
Wow, that laugh is really creepy. I think I'm going to take a deep breath, and while I do that, have the Dark Carnival activate again.
The last character I have to activate this turn is Rhodey. He is just a level 1 follower, so his life expectancy is pretty short, but we'll park him here behind Lilith, and maybe he'll survive the turn. Hey, Timmy, would you like to work at the carnival? It's job security, forever.
Now that the Dark Carnival has activated all their characters, it's time for Anger Incorporated to make their move. So I'm going to move Mr. It up 6 inches so that I can try to get line of sight on your sidekick, Magnus.
So Mr. Id is going to shoot Magnus, the undead strongman. Mr. Id has a shoot skill of 3d10, and Magnus has a shoot skill of 2d6 or a dodge of 2d6. Magnus can absorb an awful lot of punishment, so we'll have him shoot rather than dodge. So he's going to throw a rock or a skull or whatever he can get his hands on. So Mr. Id is shooting with d10s, and Magnus is shooting with d6s. I got one success, and you got one success. As the attacker, Mr. Id could choose to use his 10 to block Magnus's 5, and thereby eliminate both hits. But he's going to let both hits go through, which means both Magnus and Mr. Id need to make a single health check. Magnus has the black die, and Mr. Id has the yellow die. I passed mine, you missed yours.
That's not fair, using a torso to block my shot. Since Mr. Id missed his health check, he's injured by the rock to the gut. Now his max die type is a D8 instead of a D10. Hopefully he'll get that back when he does his recovery roll at the end of the turn. Spike didn't like the fact that Mr. Id got hit with a rock, so she's going to move up right behind him. From that vantage point, she has a clear shot at Magnus.
This time around, Magnus is going to dodge, because if he tries to shoot a second time this turn, he'll be shooting with 1d6, and that's not enough. Spike has the green dice, and Magnus has the red dice.
So I have 2 successes, you have 1.
So I did get one block, so the other one goes through, so Magnus needs to roll a health check, which he does. So Spike hit Magnus with a crossbow bolt, but then Magnus passed his health check, so he's uninjured.
I'm still the director, so I'm going to activate Danger Goat.
But before Lynn can activate Danger Goat, I'm going to play one of my fortune cards. When an enemy activates, the enemy encounters a random peril. So we decide that Danger Goat has discovered a discarded bag of taffy, which is his one weakness. Danger Goat draws a level 3 challenge for might, finesse, or cunning, or you could try to dodge it. And since the goat has a dodge of 2d6 versus 1d6 for the other attributes, that seems to be his best option.
He fails both of them. Danger Goat eats too much taffy and fails his peril. Now he has to roll 3 health checks. He passes 2, fails 1, and can't get the taffy bag off his head, so he's taken out of play. Unfortunately, as a level 1 follower, he is not entitled to a recovery check at the end of the turn. Nothing better to use on Danger Goat than taffy. Now Mac 11 is going to move up and see if there's enough holes in that corpse to get a shot through at Magnus.
So now Mac 11 is going to try to shoot Magnus, the undead strongman. Magnus has already been in 2 shootouts this turn so far, so his shoot skill is down to 0 dice, so he's going to need to dodge instead. Fortunately, Mac 11 only has a 1d6 shooting attack, so her machine pistols are really better for laying a burst template on somebody than shooting at range. So she'll be shooting with 1d6 while Magnus is dodging with 2d6.
He dodged.
He dodged. So Mac 11's machine pistols miss their mark, and that is the final activation of turn 1, so now we go into the recovery phase. So Mr. Id right here has 1 injury, right?
Yep.
So he needs to roll for recovery. 4, 5, or 6.
And Mr. Id recovers.
So that's officially the end of turn 1, and we take a moment to mourn the loss of our followers, Danger Goat and Candy Cane, who as level 1 characters are unfortunately not entitled to recovery checks at the end of the turn, so they are simply removed from play. Next, Lynn and I each draw a fortune card, and we prepare for turn 2. Here we are at the top of turn 2. Lynn is still the director, so she decides which league activates first.
So I'm going to activate Mac 11, who has a special ability called Burst. This allows her to drop a burst template on any target or targets within 12 inches. So she's going to move up slightly and see if she can get Lilith and Rhodey with the same burst.
So Mac 11 drops a burst template down on Lilith and Rhodey, which means both of them will have to pass a randomly drawn peril card. This represents them getting caught in a spray of submachine gun bullets. Lilith can take a couple of injuries before she's incapacitated, but poor Rhodey, if he gets injured, he's out. Lynn draws a level 2 challenge for might, finesse, or cunning, which both Lilith and Rhodey will have to pass if they want to avoid making any health checks. So Rhodey only gets 1d6. He missed, so he needs to make a 2-die health check.
And he
passes both of them. Go Rhodey. So while Rhodey was facing the challenge with just 1d6, Lilith has a might of 3d10, so she has a much better chance of just passing the challenge outright. Which she does. So Lilith and Rhodey both survive the burst from Mac 11's machine pistols.
So for my next activation, I'm going to activate Mr. Id and see if I can take a chunk out of Magnus. Since he can't get into short range without running, he's just going to fire at Magnus from there.
Mr. Id is shooting Magnus with 3d10, and Magnus is returning fire with 2d6. I got 2 failures, and you got 3 successes. So Magnus needs to make 3 health checks. 3d10. Because he's big and undead. And he missed 2. So Magnus takes a wound. If he takes 2 more hits before recovering, he'll be knocked over.
Since Mr. Id was successful in injuring Magnus, Nightclaw is going to attempt to do the same from on top of his carnival car.
Nightclaw is shooting with 4d8 because he's a marksman, and Magnus is going to try to dodge with 2d6. Nightclaw scored 3 successes, a 6, a 7, and a 7, which means that Magnus can only dodge 1. He's got a 6. He can block that other 6, but 2 hits are going to go through, so he needs to make 2 health checks. And for some reason that remains a mystery, I roll 3 health checks instead, so Magnus rolls an extra health check. He passes 2, fails 1, so he takes another injury, and it was just meant to be. Poor Magnus, if he takes 1 more injury before he passes a recovery check, then he'll be knocked over.
While everyone else is shooting at Magnus, Spike spies the strongbox and decides that's a better target. So she moves up to the strongbox and then uses an action to try to open it. To collect the plot point, first Spike will have to face a peril. If she succeeds, she'll have to draw another challenge to see if she can actually claim the objective.
To secure the strongbox, Spike has to draw a random peril. She draws a 2-die challenge, finesse or cunning.
She's going to choose finesse because she's better at that, plus she can reroll 1 die if she fails. Sadly, she fails both, so rerolling 1 die won't help her here. Failing the peril, Spike must roll 2 dice for her health check. Spike fails those too, so she is injured and knocked over. In retrospect, Magnus would have been a much better target.
So apparently the strongbox is booby-trapped, so Spike failed the peril check, then failed her health check, so she takes an injury, but fortunately, as a level 2 character, she'll have a chance to try to recover at the end of the turn.
I still have 1 character left to activate, and that's Bunker. For now, he's just going to sit tight. It's time for you to activate one of your characters.
So Lilith, Demon Queen of the Carnies, doesn't appreciate getting peppered with some machine gun fire, so she is going to activate, and she is going to rush Mac 11. So Lilith is a nightmare in a brawl, which doesn't bode well for Mac 11. So Mac 11 is going to try to dodge with 2d6. So normally Lilith brawls with 4d10, but once per turn she can use her Quick Strike ability, which drops her from d10s to d8s, but lets her add 2 additional dice. So she'll be brawling with 6d8. So Lilith scored 6 successes, which is amazingly good, and Mac 11 was able to dodge 1, so Mac 11 is going to have to roll 5 health checks. So Mac 11 failed 3 health checks, so she is injured. As a level 2 character, she's now knocked down, but she'll have the opportunity to try to recover at the end of the turn. And since I won that combat, I am now the director, so I get to determine which league activates next. I was originally planning to have Magnus try to secure that strongbox there, but since he's pretty close to being incapacitated, I'm going to have him run around the corner instead, and maybe he can recover from one of his injuries at the end of the turn. Next, I ask Lynn to activate one of her characters.
Bunker is the only character I've left. In an insane bid for glory, he's going to rush Lilith.
So Bunker is charging in to help out Mac 11, who just got clobbered. Lilith is choosing to brawl. She can't use Quick Strike again this turn, and because she's already fought once, she's down to 3d10, so that's what she's fighting with. To give Bunker a power-up, Lynn is playing a card that boosts his brawl from 3d6 to 3d8 for this round. So actually, this fight is pretty close. So I got 3 successes, you got 2 successes, so I need to make 2 health checks, and you need to make 3. Bunker is rolling d6s for his health check, and he misses 1, so he is injured and down.
As a level 2 ally, he has a chance to recover at the end of the turn.
Lilith rolls d10s for her health check, and for some reason, again, I roll an extra health check die. I missed 2, though, so she is injured. She takes 1 injury, but she's still standing. So Anger Incorporated managed to wound Lilith, which is not something she's used to, but she's still winning the fight for the moment. So the final 2 characters left to activate this turn are Rhodey the Roadie and Chuckles the Clown, both of whom are wimpy little level 1 followers, so any scratch and they'll be dead, but we're going to activate them. I think Chuckles is going to try to move up here. So Chuckles moved more than 6, so he can't try to open that lockbox yet, but he'll be able to next turn, assuming he's still around. So even though his odds of success are extremely low, Rhodey is going to try to chat with young Timothy Terwilliger and convince him to join the Dark Carnival. He'll start by facing a random peril because Timothy bites. Unfortunately, we draw a level 2 challenge for Might, Finesse, or Cunning, which Rhodey is automatically going to fail because he only has 1d6 in each of those categories, and I don't have any modifying cards or anything. So Rhodey fails, so he's going to have to make 2 health checks. And he makes them. So the feral child bit Rhodey, but Rhodey survived. So that's the last activation for turn 2. Now we head into the recovery phase, and we both have quite a few recovery checks to make. We start with Spike, who needs a 4, 5, or 6 to recover and stand up. And unfortunately, Spike fails her recovery check, so she is knocked out and removed from play. Mac 11 passes her recovery check, so she stands up, she's ready to fight again. Bunker's next, and unfortunately he fails his recovery check.
Bunker's bid for glory was unsuccessful, and he's removed from play as well.
Magnus, the undead strong man, needs a 4, 5, or 6 to recover from one of his wounds, and 2 he does not, so he's still wounded. And finally, Lilith, Demon Queen of the Carnies. She recovers from her single injury, perhaps because she's made of ectoplasm. So that's the end of turn 2. Now we each draw a fortune card and head into turn 3. So, let's see. We have Mr. Id right here, who's unscathed. We have Nightclaw up here, who's unscathed. We have Mac 11, who's recovered, and she is engaged with Lilith. Actually, when you stand up, you can choose to withdraw 1 inch if you care to. Okay, so she's going to go back 1 inch. And over on this side of the table, we have Rhodey the Roadie, Magnus the undead strongman, who's still got 2 injuries. He didn't recover last turn. And then Chuckles the Clown, and of course Lilith, Demon Queen of the Carnies. I'm still the director because the last decisive combat was when Lilith and Mac 11 fought back in turn 2, so I get to decide which league activates first in turn 3. I'm going to activate Lilith, who has her ectoplasm in an uproar from being injured last turn, so she is going to rush Mr. Id, who is going to respond with defensive fire. And Lilith is probably going to use her special ability, because we're in turn 3 now, Quick Strike, so she can go from 4d10 to 6d8. So you get 4d6?
D10.
4d10?
Yep.
This is going to be a battle for the ages. Okay, the big fight. So it's leader versus leader. So Lilith scores 5 successes while Mr. Id scores 3. As the attacker, Lilith can use some of her dice to block Mr. Id's successes of equal to or lesser value. So I have 1 health check to make, and you have 3. And I'm rolling d10s, and I assume you are too because you're not injured.
Right.
Lilith rolls a single health check and fails it, so she is injured. So Lilith takes a hit, and then Mr. Id fails his health check, so he takes 1 as well. So both of the Titans are injured. A flurry of gunfire and ectoplasmic claws has left both leaders wounded, but still locked in combat. I'm still the director, so next I'm going to activate one of my 3 remaining characters. Chuckles the Clown has calculated the odds of trying to secure that strongbox, and it's pretty low, so he's going to try to rush somebody instead. With a maniacal grin, Chuckles races around the corner and confronts Mac 11. So Chuckles is going to brawl with 2d6, and Mac 11 is doing defensive fire with 2d6. So I'm the red dice, and you're the green dice. So Chuckles the Clown and Mac 11 each scored 1 success. Chuckles chooses not to block, so each character takes a 1-die health check. Chuckles passes his health check, but Mac 11 fails, so she's knocked over. She'll have to try to recover at the end of the turn. So Chuckles came running up with his buck knife and took out poor Mac 11, but she might recover.
She might.
Okay, let's see who else we got.
You've got Magnus and you've got the roadie.
So Rhodey is a little bit gun-shy about talking to Timothy Terwilliger, so he decides it's a safer bet to just join the big brawl between Mr. Id and Lilith, so he's going to rush in over there. So Rhodey's going to try to get in there and help with the epic battle between Lilith and Mr. Id. So Mr. Id is wounded, and he's already fought once, so he is brawling with 2d8, correct?
Yep.
All right, here we go. So I got 1 success, and you got 2 successes. I'm not going to block. I'm just going to let him go through. So Rhodey needs to make 2 health checks, and you need to make 1. So Rhodey passed 1 health check, but he failed the other one, and Mr. Id failed his single health check. So Mr. Id takes a 2nd injury, 1 more, and he'll be knocked down, and Rhodey is simply removed from play. So the final character I have to activate is Magnus, the undead strongman. He has 2 injuries, so 1 more injury, and he will be knocked down. Regardless, Magnus is going to move forward about 12 inches and park next to this strong box full of loot, but he can't try to open it yet because he moved over 6 inches. Magnus really needs to pass a recovery check at the end of this turn so he can get rid of one of those injuries. So this wasn't really a plan or anything, but I just kept activating my people, and in so doing, took out a couple of yours. So the people on your side left to activate in Anger Incorporated are Mr. Id and Nightclaw. And Mac 11 is on the ground. So what would you like to do?
Well, you only left me 1 option for Nightclaw, and that's to fill your clown full of bullets.
Okay. So Nightclaw is going to shoot at Chuckles, because fortunately Mac 11 is on the ground, so Nightclaw has no danger of hitting Mac 11. So Nightclaw is taking deadly aim at Chuckles the Clown, and Chuckles is going to try to dodge with 1d6. How many d8s do you get?
4.
4 d8s?
Yep. He's a marksman.
Okay. So 4 d8s versus 1d6. 3 successes, 0 dodges. So I'm going to make 3 health checks. So Chuckles has to make 3 health checks. And fails 2. So that's the end of Chuckles the Clown. Laugh, clown, laugh.
If I had a choice, I wouldn't activate Mr. Id, but since he's in a battle with Lilith right now, he has to fight.
So Mr. Id is activating in the big fight with Lilith, Demon Queen of the Carnies. He's already fought twice, so if he chooses to brawl, he'll be down to 1d8. So he's going to dodge with 2d8 instead, because that doesn't degrade over the course of a turn, no matter how many times you use it. So the Demon Queen of the Carnies has muscles of steel, so her attack dice don't degrade as she gets injured. But she did fight once already, so she's down to 3d10 instead of 4d10. And you're going to use your sidestep card to give Mr. Ed an additional dodge die. So what would that bring his dodge dice to?
3d8.
3d8. So attacking with 3d10, defending with 3d8. So Lilith scored 2 successes, a 5 and a 9, it looks like. And while Mr. Id did get 1 success, technically, a 4, that number is not high enough to block either the 5 or the 9. So Mr. Id needs to roll 3 health checks, rolling d6s because he's already been injured twice. Looks like he missed 2 of them. So Mr. Id takes his 3rd injury, which knocks him to the ground, and hopefully he can recover at the end of the turn. So in a shocking turn of events, Lilith has incapacitated Mr. Id, which for the moment leaves Nightclaw as the last standing member of Anger Incorporated. So let's see what happens during the recovery phase. So we're going to start with Lilith's recovery check and see if she can recover from her injury. I actually have a card I can play called I'm All Right. So instead of rolling a health check for recovery, the check is passed. So I'm just going to have Lilith automatically pass her health check just because she is the Demon Queen of the Carnies. Some people could say that I should have helped out Magnus instead, but he's undead. He doesn't mind. So we're going to roll a recovery check for Magnus. And he fails it. So Magnus is still wounded. So you have a couple of health checks you need to worry about. One is Mac 11, and then one is Mr. Id. So that's kind of important.
Oh, Mr. Id.
Okay, so Mr. Id passed, so he stands up and goes from 3 wounds to 2. And Mac 11. And she passes, so she stands up. Okay. And with that, we go into turn 4.
May I have a card, please?
You may have a card. Okay. I think I'm still the director. And who do I even have left? I got Lilith and Magnus, but that's it. Okay, Magnus is going to rush Mac 11, even though he's wounded. So Mac 11 whips around, aims her 9mm machine pistols at the undead strongman, and blazes away as he charges in. So she gets 2d6, and Magnus also has muscles of steel, so his brawl is 3d8. And here we go. I got 2 successes, and you didn't get any successes.
He's pretty scary. What do you expect?
It's pretty scary. Your health is d6s.
Yep.
So Mac 11.
And again, Mac 11 fails her health check and falls over injured. Maybe she just wants a nap.
So Magnus, the undead strongman, knocked down Mac 11, and now Lilith, Demon Queen of the Carnies, is going to have some words with Mr. Id. So he's brawling with 3d6s. Lilith is going to use her special ability Quick Strike and go from d10s to d8s and roll 6 of them. So here we go. So I'm going to roll 1 health check and you're going to roll 2. Rolling for Mr. Id first. And you pass them both.
Yay for Mr. Id.
And Lilith passes hers too.
Of course she does.
So that's it for the last remaining minions of the Dark Carnival. Now Anger Incorporated gets to activate all of its characters here at the end. Nightclaw could shoot Magnus.
That's exactly what he's going to do.
All right. Nightclaw drawing a bead on the undead strongman. Nightclaw is shooting with 4d8 and Magnus is dodging with 2d6. You got 4 hits. So I didn't dodge any. I got 1 success, but it's not high enough to dodge anything. So I'm going to make 4 health checks. And I'm currently down to, let's see, D10, D8, D6. Come on, Magnus. And he's down.
And hopefully he stays down.
So the last character left to activate is Mr. Id, and he is in no condition to brawl right now. He's already fought once this turn, and he has 2 injuries, so he would be brawling with 2d6. So instead he's going to dodge with 2d8, and Lilith is going to brawl with 3d10. So Lilith scored 3 successes. Mr. Id dodged well enough to block one of them, but he still needs to make 2 health checks. Fails it, he goes down. Okay, we're going to call it there since it looks like the Forces of Anger Incorporated are struggling a little bit, and the dice rolls just did not go their way. But we're going to check and see who recovered here at the end. So I'll roll for Magnus, and he does not recover, so Magnus is actually gone.
Yay!
And you want to roll for Mr. Id, and he's gone. And Mac 11, and she's back on her feet.
Yay, resilient.
So even though Lilith, Demon Queen of the Carnies, is all alone now except for her new recruit, Timothy Terwilliger, Mac 11 and Nightclaw feel like they would struggle to bring down this ectoplasmic monster. So they're going to lay down covering fire, which will give Mr. Id and Spike and Danger Goat and who else? Oh, and Bunker, the opportunity to recover slightly and crawl off the board so they can fight again another day. So that's what happened. There's a flurry of 9mm shots into the ectoplasm, which barely holds Lilith at bay, and the rest of the team is able to kind of barrel roll off the board. They kind of claw their way off the board, and they're going to get back to the fortress and recover a little bit. But they'll be back. Anger Incorporated will be back at some future date to fight again. So Lilith laughs her demonic laugh and says, "Come with me, boy. We have work to do." Yeah, Nightclaw had the right idea. He just stood on top of the wagon and shot people from a distance. So that probably was the winning strategy. But the rest of them, they fought the good fight. Just wasn't their day. And, when you enter a place called the Dark Carnival, you can expect that, bad stuff might happen. So
If Danger Goat could have resisted the taffy, things could have gone very differently. He was the key to our entire strategy.
So one final thought on today's game. I know that Mr. Id is out of play, but I kind of feel like Mac 11 and Nightclaw would have had a fairly decent chance to take out Lilith if they worked together.
This is probably true, except for one problem. You're the director, so you can attack, and once you attack Mac 11, I can't shoot her.
Well, that's a good point. So if Lilith activates first, she can simply rush one of the 2 characters, get him into a brawl where they're at a disadvantage, and then just pick them off one at a time.
Right.
Well, folks, we hope you enjoyed our 3rd on-screen game of Pulp Alley 2nd Edition, and as always, thank you very much for stopping by. If you like the things we do here, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please give this video a big thumbs up, and of course, please visit us online at our website, skirmishwargames.com.